Hey, this is Brian Kachejian of ClassicRockHistory.com. And today I have with me, via the magic of Zoom, a legendary rock and roll star who became a household name in the early 1960s when he scored a couple of number one hit singles on the UK pop music charts, written by some very famous lads who we'll get into very soon. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Billy J. Kramer. Hey, Billy.
How do you do, Brian? Pleased to
It's
meet you.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you. Now, I'm in New York right now, and I think you're in Chicago. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I'm in Chicago.
Is that where you live now? Are you currently residing in Chicago?
Yes, I live in Chicago. Yes.
All right. Um,
I lived in New York prior to this, but I live in Chicago now.
Now I was watching some other interviews, and I thought I heard you say that there was a time when you lived on Long Island.
Yes, I lived on Long Island for quite a number of years.
Really? So, what
Yeah.
part of Long
Huh?
Island did you live out of?
I lived in Glen Cove. I lived in Oyster Bay. I lived in Huntington.
Oh,
All
okay.
different places. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the island right now, and those are all great areas. That's the North Shore there.
Yeah.
You know, Suffolk County, North Shore. Huntington's a great city. A lot of music
Yeah.
venues there.
Yeah.
And what were you there during the 80s, the 90s, or?
I was in the 80s, 90s. I was there till about 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Long Island had a great music scene. In the 70s and the 80s, a lot of people come from the island. A lot of
Sure.
famous musical acts and a lot of nightclub work. But
Yeah.
you grew up in Liverpool, am I correct?
I grew up in Liverpool. Bootle is a suburb of Liverpool. Yes. That's where I grew up.
What was it like growing up there at that time? And
Well, it was after World War II and things weren't plentiful,
yeah,
you know. Yeah. But I was happy, I had a happy childhood there.
it's what you knew, I guess. I mean, you grow up
That that that
wherever
is
you
it,
grow up. Yeah.
I mean, there were seven of us. We weren't a well-off family. My father worked on the docks, but we were very close, and we made a lot of our own fun back then. I mean, it was like soccer in the winter, cricket in the summer in the street. You know, that's what we did. We
D-
didn't sit around playing with cell phones,
no. I mean, I grew up in the Bronx in the 1960s. So I
right?
understand that. We grew up outside on the streets making our own games.
Yeah,
You know,
that was it.
we didn't, I know here in the States, I mean, I had like four or five TV channels, so there was not much TV to watch.
No,
And
there was, when I grew up, we didn't even have a TV.
yeah,
And then I think there was one family in the street that one we used to all pile in there, you know. But we listened to the radio a lot,
yeah,
some good stuff on the radio.
sure. I mean, that's during the 50s, right? And late 40s, I guess, when you were a child. And most
Yeah,
people just had radios back then. They didn't
sure.
have TVs. I don't think TVs really become popular until the 60s or maybe late
Right.
50s. Um, and you went to, I think what I was
Now,
reading.
now you've got 300 channels and you don't know what to
Yeah.
watch.
I don't know if you remember in the 90s, Bruce Springsteen wrote a song called 57 Channels and Nothing On. And that's kind of seems ridiculous now, saying just 57 channels.
Oh
Now,
yeah, it is.
yeah, now it is, three to 500 channels. And like you just said, nothing to watch. Um, but I
Yeah.
think I think people like yourself who grew up during those times, during the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, this is where you had artists develop, right? This is because there was nothing else to do. So people who had that in
No,
their heart,
well, I think that's, I mean, and I think what kicked off a lot of stuff in the UK was, skiffle came along, music called skiffle, which was, just an acoustic guitar. They made a bass out of a T-chest bass and a washboard with cymbals, and it was very cheap to do. So a lot of kids got into that kind of stuff. That was a big music thing.
Because it was accessible.
It was accessible and it was cheap, you know.
Yeah. Because not everybody could afford a piano. You know.
Not everybody could afford a piano. And also, it's funny because, like, let's face it, England wasn't known for guitars, but suddenly when the skiffle came along, 25,000 acoustic guitars sold, you know.
Yeah. So a lot of the origins of rock and roll are right there in
Yeah.
that instrument. Did,
No, but I think that's what kicked off the musical thing in the UK.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you have music I mean, you went to St. George's Elementary School. Is that where you went to?
I went to first when I was a kid, very young. I went to Oral Primary School. I sang in the choir there, and then I went to what's called secondary modern at St. George of England. I was there till I left school. I left school when I was 15. I
Were
didn't
there
go to Cotton.
were there nuns teaching in that school, or priests, brothers?
No, no, no. It wasn't nuts. It was mostly males. You know.
Just male teachers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was there. I left there when I was 15.
And why did you leave at 15? What, did you go into the workforce?
Um, I had to get a job. You know, we didn't have a lot of money. But I went to work for British Rail, and I was training to be an engineer. You know, I worked on maintenance, locomotive maintenance. You know, taking them to pieces and putting them back together again, and servicing them and that kind of stuff. You know, it was a heavy job.
Did you like doing that work?
Um, it was okay. You know, it's one of them things. You know, I got used to it. It was very physical. It was a very physical job, heavy. You know, um, and I was supposedly studying to be an engineer, and I was supposed to go to night school. Which what happened was I started a band with school friends and guys in the local neighborhood, and I started getting gigs and playing every night. So I wasn't going to school and stuff like that. You know.
All right. So you started doing gigs, like cover gigs, doing cover songs. Is that what you guys were doing?
Yeah, well, I would cover most of the songs that were in the charts at the time. You know, the Buddy Holly songs, the Fats Domino songs, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Ricky Nelson, Del Shannon, all of them. You know.
And how did you learn the songs? I mean, did you buy the records or just from memory from listening to the radio?
I listened to. We used to listen to Luxembourg on Sunday night, and that's where all the pop songs were played. And also, as I started to buy records, and I would take the lyrics, and then I would learn them on the bus going to work in the morning. You know.
Were the clubs rough that you played? I mean, did you have to play like 2, 3, 4 hours, or was it just a couple
Well,
of
you know, we
songs?
played long sets, but it didn't seem rough. I'll be honest with you, it was rough coming home from work at 5 in the afternoon and loading a van or a truck, and then going to a gig and setting the gear up, and then doing the gig and then breaking it all down and then taking it home and packing it into the house and then getting up at 6 and 7 in the morning to go to work. That was rough, you know.
That's really difficult. I mean, it's tough enough to be a nightclub musician and do that type of work, but then to have to also work a day job, it's almost impossible to do that.
Well, you know, did get that way, quite frankly, where I knew it was going to have to be one thing or the other.
Yeah.
It was really getting to me, you know. And then I was very lucky that there was a poll in a newspaper called Mersey Beat, and I came second in the top 20 bands. The Beatles won it, and I came second, joint second with a guy called Lee Curtis. And uh, it was, you know, there was a presentation, and at the time, I mean, I was about to pack it all up and go to a place called Crewe to work on at Rolls Royce for a year as part of the training, and I was about to leave Liverpool, and then when this poll came up, they had a presentation night where we all had to get up and play some songs. And Brian Epstein presented me with a tour of Scotland, which I declined because I was doing a day job. And it was shortly afterwards that he approached me to be and for him to be my manager.
So how does he approach you? Does he just come up to you in the club, or I mean, how did you meet him?
Exactly. Well, I had a manager at the time, and one day he said that it was a Saturday. He said, "Do you fancy taking a trip into Liverpool?" And we got the bus into Liverpool. We walked into this restaurant, and Brian Epstein was sat at the table. And the manager I had said, "To tell you the truth, I've done as much for you as what I can. And Brian Epstein would like to manage you."
Wow. And so was he a charming guy when you first met him? I mean, were you
Brian was
sold on
very
him?
charming. He was a charming man, a very nice man, yes.
And so you said
And
yes.
quite frankly, I wouldn't have, I had security with that job. I could have stayed there for life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have taken a chance for anybody else because I could see the moves he was making with the Beatles.
Yeah. So, I mean, not everybody always gets a shot. Not everybody always gets a chance in life like that. So,
I was very lucky, very lucky.
but you also made the right decision. I mean, it's sometimes it's tough to
Well, I
walk
made
away
some
from
bad
something.
ones, but that was one good one.
Yeah. Well, I guess everybody has, right? Everybody, you know, nobody has a perfect record. Um,
No.
but you got your career started. So now you recorded. Do you want to know a secret? Before the Beatles, was it before the Beatles recorded the song?
Yes, it was. It was a number one hit in some charts and number two in others.
Yes.
It was, Brian gave me a tape of just John playing it on an acoustic guitar. And I learned it with the band, and we played it on all the gigs, and we played it in Hamburg 10 times a night. So, I recorded it exactly how we did it live.
Well, I guess because you were playing it, every night, over and over again, it kind of builds into muscle memory. So I guess did that
Yes.
help recording it?
I'll be honest with you. I just did it as a test with George Martin. I was very surprised when he said he would like to release what we'd done because I didn't think I was at the top of my game that particular day because I was new to the studio. I just met George Martin, which was I was overwhelmed a bit. Um, but he thought it was good enough and released it. And it went up the charts.
Yeah, because recording in a studio is a completely different animal from playing live, and not everyone's
It's
made out
it's
for that.
it's a totally different thing altogether,
Yeah,
and it's a totally different thing together today to what it was back then because it was more or less nearly as live.
sure. Now, George Martin, is this very famous producer that everybody knows who he was. But what was it like being in a studio with George Martin? And what does he exactly do that made him so special?
Um, you know, I didn't really realize it at the time,
Yeah.
because there was so much going on. But I mean, it's like, um, he would sit at the piano and routine the song with the band, and he would embellish the chords and stuff like that. Which I don't read music, but he was very good at putting things together. For instance, like when I recorded "Bed to Me," it was like people would say to me, like, "What was the demo like?" Well, there was no demo. It was just John Lennon came and sat at the piano, believe it or not, and played it. And then we routined the song with George Martin. And he was like, instead of playing that chord, play this chord. This will be nicer. And he was, he put it together.
So he was a musician himself. He was,
Yes, he was.
yeah. I don't think everybody understands that.
They don't understand that. And he was very, at the time, technology wasn't like it is today, but he would like slow tracks down and play things on the piano in the lower register. And when it was sped up, it was spot on. He working things like that out. He was very smart.
Now, that's not easy to do. Manipulating tape is not an easy thing to do. to create
And
sound.
editing was not like it is today.
Yeah.
Editing then was done with a razor blade and tape.
I know,
You
isn't
know,
that something that's
it
what you
wasn't
actually had to do.
it wasn't like today with Pro Tools.
Yeah. And you couldn't really make a mistake with cutting the tape the wrong way.
If you
Otherwise,
did, it was big trouble.
yeah. Yeah, you were definitely in big trouble. So, but like you said, you're in the fire when you're recording. You're a young person. How old were you when you recorded Do You Want to Know a Secret and Bad for Me?
19.
Yeah. So
I was 19.
that's got
I
to be
was
immense
20 when
pressure.
it was. And, I mean, I was 20 when I recorded Bad to Me because John Lennon told me about the song at my 20th birthday party, which was a very memorable occasion. But, it was because, I mean, back then we got 3 hours. I'd never heard these songs before, so I had to learn them. George Martin had to arrange them, and we had to do A and B in 3 hours.
Yeah. So you had to do the B side too.
Yeah.
So now you just said that John Lennon told you about the song at your 20th birthday. What did he say to you?
I was backstage at a gig, and he says, he was reading the newspaper, and he says, we just got into the charts in America. And I said, congratulations. And he says, by the way, I've written a song for you.
How do you feel when he says something like that to you?
I said, well, you're going to play it to me? And he says, no, I'll come to Abbey Road the next time you're recording. I never thought he'd show, but he did. And he sat at the piano and played it.
And what was your first reaction when you first heard that song?
Um, I just thought it was a great song.
Yeah.
He also said, I want to run something by you and tell me what you think of it. And he played, I Want to Hold Your Hand. I said, can I have that one? He says,
Yeah.
no, we're doing that one ourselves.
Oh boy, yeah, that would have been a nice one to have.
It was, but I was quite happy with Bad to Me.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine that if you had recorded I Want to Hold Your Hand. I mean, the whole course of history could have changed right there.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
You just never know. But hey, you were pretty successful with Bad to Me, though. I mean,
Well, it got to number one.
yeah.
You can't go any further than
No,
that.
you can't get any more successful than a number one hit record. And so, what's the song is that the song that brings you to? I mean, when do you come to the United States?
Funny enough, I came to the United States before the Beatles and did a small promotional tour
Okay.
prior. And Brian was negotiating to do Ed Sullivan. So I did a promotional tour, and then I went back to England, and I had a hit with Secret Bad to Me, I'll Keep You Satisfied. And then I went away from Lennon McCartney and had a number one hit with the more Schumann song, Little Children.
Yeah.
And then they released it as a double A side in America. So they were fighting each other. So it never went to, it came in the charts it was the highest, came in the Billboard charts at number 8, which was the highest entry in history.
What's going through your mind then? I mean, when you're having all the success on the charts, what are you thinking? I mean, how does that
Overload.
affect you?
It's like overload.
Yeah,
It's overload.
because you're still so young. I mean,
You're very young, you're very inexperienced, and it's like, where do I go from here?
this is, I guess, the point where you need somebody to help you, where you need good management or somebody you can trust. I mean, who do you
Well,
trust right now? So you
I
trusted
trusted
Brian.
Brian Epstein.
Yeah,
Yeah, Brian Epstein was a gentleman, and he was great. You know,
yeah, he must have been a real special person.
he was very special.
Was he like a father figure? Not just to you, but to everybody?
He was a father figure, and he was like he would come to shows. He wouldn't tell you he was coming, and then he'd come backstage afterwards, and he'd have everything written down. He'd critique it all. The set list, how you introduce the songs. Uh, he would go through it all. And he was, uh, he was a class act. It's like when I remember I did something I did at the London Palladium, which is a big show. It's on a par with Ed Sullivan,
Yeah.
and I was about to go in the dressing room and get changed. I had a new suit made for it. It was a special big occasion, and Brian walked in and said, "That's not the kind of suit you wear up Sunday night at the London Palladium." He'd had a suit made for me.
Yeah. So he's looking out for you in all different ways.
Yeah, he was hands on, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's important because, like we keep going back to your age. I mean, you think you've lived a full life, over time, you've just become more experienced, you gain knowledge, and you think about how much knowledge you knew when you were 20 years old compared to what you know now.
I didn't know anything, you know.
Yeah, I think you ask almost anybody who's, 50 and above, you don't know much. You might think you know a lot. Uh,
Yeah, you think you know a lot.
yeah,
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I always say to people, there are no schools to to go to for this kind of thing.
yeah,
You're really going by the seat of your pants.
yeah,
At times you're having to make decisions quickly, and that they're not the right decisions. You know, you make decisions and you might upset people at times, and just there's a lot of growing up. I always tell people say to me, when do you think you were, when did you think that you were any good? And I said, I did a tour with Peter Noon, and we did 90 shows in the UK together. And the last one was at the London Palladium. And I was 52, and I thought to myself, maybe I've got something, but maybe I've got it right. Maybe I've got it right now.
yeah. But don't you think that's what drives musical artists? That you're always thinking that you're not good enough or you have to get better. That's what drives people to be.
I think so. I mean, even now after all these years, I still, when I go in the studio, I try to give 150%.
Yeah.
You know,
What's the heart of an artist? That
yeah,
that wants to do. I mean, there's so many stories in rock and roll history of famous artists, famous albums like Steely Dan's Asia, where they were never satisfied, with the recording. Springsteen was never satisfied with Born to Run. And,
I'll be honest with you. I was in it with me. I'll be honest with you. My early albums were just the hit, the backside, and just fillers.
yeah,
It wasn't until later years when you sat down and thought, I'm going to make an album. I'm going to make sure every track is great. That I didn't get that luxury in the early days. I went to studios. I'll be honest with you. 90% of the songs I recorded, I never ever did them live. I sang them off the lyric sheet, and most of them I never ever did again. You know, I I recorded over 55, maybe 50, 60 songs at Abbey Road with George Martin, and there's only a handful of them that I did live.
now was that because of a contract where you had to record songs?
Yes,
Yeah,
I had to record songs, and you know, I don't think record companies back then really were aware of artistic development. You know,
yeah. It was a hit single market. I mean, the 50s and
it was, you know,
60s.
and then it went to albums.
Yeah, eventually that's where it gets. I mean, music changes. Where do you think that starts? Like, where do you think music begins to go to the album
I think the
focus?
Beatles started it.
Yeah,
The Beatles started it. They let's face it, they put out albums where every song was great.
yeah.
And to me, that was the barometer of what you had to do. You had to try and get 10 or 12 songs that were great.
Let's get back to you and what you were doing, and I would like to talk about the Ed Sullivan Show because I know in the States that was the biggest show on TV for years. And what was it
Right.
like to have to appear on the Ed Sullivan Show?
Uh, what was it like? Well, there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah,
You know, the thought of the thought of a camera being on you and 70 odd million people watching you is a bit scary.
Do you
I'll be
not
honest
think
with
of
you.
that?
I of course I did,
Yeah.
but I'll be honest with you. I was getting more experience. I just went to the rehearsal, and then I got back to the theatre just about to go on. I
You
went back
remember?
to the hotel, watched TV.
And so then you got to the theater just when they were about to go live. Do you remember being in the dressing room just before you went on?
Yeah,
And
I
what
was
was going?
scared.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was
It's got to be
scared.
pretty scary.
Yeah.
But I guess once you hit that stage and once you start singing, does all of that disappear and you just now you're working?
And I'll be honest with you, and I think that, I'm not just saying this, but I think that coming to America, people weren't so reserved. Like the people, like the cameraman and the people working on the floor, were a lot different to how they were in England. They were a lot looser, which made you feel comfortable.
Okay, all right. It's just a different culture.
Yes, it is a different
Yeah.
culture.
And I guess the Ed Sullivan Show was the biggest show in the States, and I guess all those people were just so used to being with different stars every night, and it's just to them it was just work. It was a union job, and so
And then I'll be honest with you, then I did a week at the World's Fair, which was a phenomenal experience.
in Queens, the one in
Yeah,
Queens. Oh
yeah, the
yeah,
one in Queens. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's still there. Well, I'm sure you know
It's still
that.
there, I saw the first microwave there and all that kind of stuff.
I went to the World's Fair. I was very
Yeah,
little. I was 4 years old.
right.
I might have walked by where you were playing. Who knows? Um, I have very small memories of it because I was so young.
Right.
But
It was fantastic.
yeah, it was. I do remember driving one of those GM cars in the GM building, and I do
Yeah.
remember the dinosaurs and all of that. And it's nice that it's still there. The buildings, some of the buildings are still there.
Some of the buildings are still there, yeah.
In fact, one of them, Terrace on the Park, is a catering hall. You know,
Yes.
and where I've done a lot of weddings there, and you just kind of look out the windows on top.
Yeah. I've been there. I've been
Yeah.
there since.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you were a Long Island guy for a while.
Sure.
So, all right. I want to get to your new album, which I think is fantastic, and it just came out, and it features 10 songs, correct?
Right.
And some of them are cover versions, and some of them are originals.
Uh, the only cover is Jealous Guy,
Oh, okay, the Lennon song. Yes, I listened
the
to
John
that.
Lennon song, which is a favorite of mine. And I thought it was kind of paying a tribute to John Lennon. You know,
And
that's why I did it. It's just, I always do that song if I'm doing a gig on his birthday.
oh, really?
You know, I do, yes. And people like it. So I thought that's why I did it. But all the other songs, I only wrote two of them. I wrote Be Kind to Emma, A Peace of Mind. The others were written by Tom Hambridge, who produces Buddy Guy. He wrote a couple. Mark Hudson wrote a song. A guy called J.J. Gilmore wrote a song. Jeff Fairholtz, the one of the producers, he wrote a song called My Sweet Rose. So they're all new original songs.
I like the song "My Sweet Rose." I think that's the second album. Is that the second album on the track? On the
Yes.
second track? Yeah, I really like that one, and I love the video you did for it, where you.
Yeah, well, I was in Liverpool shortly after I did the album at Abbey Road, and we got a camera, and we never scripted it or anything. I just walked through the streets, and they took it, and that was it. It's one of them days that everything aligned. It just worked out great.
It is a wonderful video. I mean, you're walking around, you look very happy, you sound great. You're walking around the famous Beatles statues there. I see the Cavern Club in the background. Was there any other famous spots you went to that maybe I didn't notice in the video?
I can't think offhand,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
But we got a lot of stuff in there, you know.
How
We got
long
the
did it
cabin
take?
and this. Pardon?
How long did it take you to film the video?
A couple of hours.
Oh,
That's
not too
all.
bad. Yeah.
No, not at all. You know, and the little girl. You know, it's funny because there was a lot of people uh, were taking pictures at the statue, and a little girl was there, and her parents were there, and I said, "Can I use your daughter?" You know,
Oh,
that was great.
completely improvising right
It
there.
was all the whole thing was an improvised thing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's when you get the best stuff, right?
I think so. As I say, it was one of them days that just worked out great. You
Yeah.
know,
So, I mean, it's got to feel good to be putting out new music. It just really speaks to the true heart of who you are as an artist, just continuing.
oh yeah, you know, it definitely. It was a wonderful experience to go back to Abbey Road and to work with some great musicians. You know, I had a birthday party there. I did a show there, and then we recorded an album. So that's a it's a very memorable occasion.
It has to be probably one of the most special places in the world as far as music goes, Abbey Road.
Well, you know, it's very special. I mean, let's face it, the Beatles did all their recording there. Shirley Bassey recorded there.
Yeah.
There was a great singer called Matt Monroe, way back recorded. The Peter Sellers recorded there.
Yeah. So
You
many.
know, a, a lot of people. You know, the Hollies, Cliff Richard, everybody.
I got a chance to visit Abbey Road a couple of years ago. And, it was like a religious experience walking down that street. Although there was a lot more traffic than I expected. It's,
Yeah, it's busier now than what it was in. You know, it was quieter years ago. And let's face it, now there's always sightseers and tourists. You know,
I mean, everybody wants to walk across that famous, crosswalk there.
I did. I walked across it.
Yeah. How could you
I've
not?
walked across it before. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's one of the most famous album covers of all time, and everybody wants to walk across. And I found a really great record store right around the block over there.
right?
That,
Sure.
yeah, and then I loved London. Um, I took my younger son, my 16-year-old son, there a few years ago, and it's the only city
It's a
that
great
ever reminded
experience.
me a bit of New York City.
Yeah, it's a great place. Great place.
It has that just big city vibe. It really, really was a special place. And was the studio different now than it was in the '60s?
The studio is, but the obviously the equipment is state of the art, up to date now. You know,
Of course, yeah.
that it's a lot different in the sound booth. You know, but the downstairs parts are exactly the same.
Yeah. Have they upgraded the piano that
Yeah,
many of those famous songs were played on?
yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I can still see where John Lennon played the songs and where George Martin was. Yeah,
Wow, that's really special. Um,
yeah.
so now, what are you doing with the album? You're promoting the album. You're doing some shows.
Doing some shows. I'm doing the festival for Beatle fans in Chicago. I'm going back to Abbey Road to do a historic interview there. Um, I'm going to Liverpool to do thing for the Brian Epstein um, documentary that they're doing, and I'm doing a thing at the Beatle Museum there on August 26th.
So you're pretty busy there,
I'm
Billy.
very busy in August, yes.
Yes. Is that the way you like it? Do you like to stay this busy, or do you?
Yeah, I like to stay busy, yes.
Yes.
It's, I always tell people, I said, like, people say, well, you know, like my sister says, when are you going to retire? And I went, never. This is what I do.
It's not good to retire. You know,
No,
it's not.
no,
It's not good for you.
I hate the word.
Yeah. Well, we don't need
Yeah,
it. We throw it out. Let's never
yeah,
say retire
get rid
again.
of it.
Yeah.
No, you gotta just keep on going.
Yeah. I think that's one of the special attributes of musicians. You know, musician. I mean, I just saw the Rolling Stones a few months ago at MetLife Stadium in Jersey. And those guys, they sounded great. And
Sure.
yeah, and And it's
I've only
so
seen
inspiring.
I've only seen the YouTube things, and they, to me they sound better than ever.
And such a spectacular stage show, but just great. And I just interviewed Ian Pace of Deep Purple, and they just put a new album out. You
I
know,
know. They've just had a new single. Great album. Great
yeah,
single. Yeah.
yeah. And he's still hungry. He still wants to play. And a lot of the people that I've interviewed recently are all just musicians that got their starts in the '60s, and they're still hungry and they still want to go out and play because
That's,
I guess it's in your blood, right?
yeah. It's what we were put here for,
Yeah. So
I
why
guess.
stop that, man?
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, that's really inspiring for people like me. And I hope it's very inspiring for people watching this. You know,
I hope so too.
yeah, I think it is. I think it is, to just keep pushing along and doing what you love, you know.
Well, I've never considered this to be a job.
Yeah.
It's not a job. You know, not many people get a job that they love.
Yeah.
This is something that I love to do. That's it.
Yeah. And that's the greatest gift you could ever get, right?
Yeah.
To yourself. Well, Billy, it's been a real joy to speak with you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been nice talking to you.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I look forward, to the specials, the documentaries that you're working on, and watching them. I'm sure those are going to be great. And good luck with the album. And
Well, thank you.
we're
Thank
gonna
you.
write it all up and let people hear it and promote it for you. And I know people will enjoy this interview,
Well, thank you.
getting to know you, Billy.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Well, good luck on your safe travels to back home to London.
Okay. Thank you. Bye
All
bye
right.
now.
All right, Billy. Take care
Cheerio.
now. Bye bye.
Wonderful.
Thank
Bye.
you.